Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club, and we are ideally going to finish up our build of the Quest Harpoon AGM. Now, in the intervening days since the last video, months really, I have taken the time to go through our usual business of going through a fill coat with this stuff, and then the seal coat with this stuff, and then priming it with spray paint, and then putting the finishing coat, and of course sanding down in between each. So that leaves us with the final construction phases. Now, looking at the instructions here, I am on step 16, which wants me to apply these self-adhesive decals. So as it turns out, the decals that come with this are not self-adhesive, which in looking at them, I wasn't super shocked by that, but I can see how it would certainly be very annoying should you be ready to just stick some stickers on when instead you are going to be applying water slide decals instead. Now, as a reminder, water slides, hence the name, or as the name would suggest, require you to get them wet first in some hot water. So that's what this little custard cup here is for. It's full of warm water anyway. And let them sit for a little bit, kind of dissolves the glue backing and gets it ready to go. There are a lot of decals, and I have already taken the time to cut most of them apart, and you can see a good stack over here. I'm not going to do all this on camera. You'll also notice that some of these, like this one here, I have left intact without cutting it apart because they're, well, on this one, there are 8 separate decals, and I will get to them eventually, but it's going to take a while. There's actually a lot of work to do on this. Your best bet is to not let the decal sit in the water as long as I did, because it started coming right off in the water, which is something to be avoided. Now, once you have the decal wet enough, you can apply it. Now, of course, you need to know where it goes, and we'll look at the instructions in a moment. But this one I know is going at the very top, and it's going almost right up against the nose cone where the nose cone comes apart, and just across the body. So once that's in place, I'm going to use a paper towel here to dry it out and press it smooth. So since this is one that goes the whole way around the body, it's a fairly easy task to just pat it dry as you're going around. To figure out where they go, here are the instructions. And regardless of how good resolution this video is, this picture right here is about as bad a photocopy as you're likely to find. So although there are plenty of little lines showing you where all these things should go, it's not useful, like in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, this decal sheet, the layout doesn't completely match what mine looked like to begin with. So not useful. Instead, you need to go back to the packaging. And the packaging, although the packaging appears that everything is gray or black or white, mine has blue in it, which is also kind of weird and kind of annoying. But we will make do. And again, I'm not going to demonstrate where all this stuff goes because that would take forever. But let's just do a big one on camera here. Sometimes the big ones are easier. Sometimes the big ones are harder. Can't really say for sure whether what your preferences will be. They tend to be easier to work with than the tiny ones when it comes to lining them up right and getting things where you want them to go. But they do have a penchant for being a little harder to smooth out, and just getting them to line up right in the first place is a little bit tough sometimes. Anyway, this one, looking at the instructions here, it is this guy right here. So it is going just about midway between these forward fins and the end of the tube. It's also worth noting that I probably should have lined up these little boxes in the very first decal that I just did with the fin lines, but mine are actually pretty close to that, and truth be told, it's not terribly important. All right, so looking at the picture, the circle with rectangle part ought to be up toward the nose cone, and this is probably a good enough place. It is nice and not attached anymore, so I'm just going to spin the rocket as I remove the backing in order to try to lay it on as accurately as possible. Unfortunately, you can't see everything because my hand is in the way, but such is life. All right, now I have got the decal on, but you'll notice that this junction point is not quite right, which is unfortunate. The smaller decals, oh, and look at that. This one is so fragile that my attempt to realign it has actually damaged it, which is fun. Well, that's just going to be an imperfection then in the final product, unfortunately. And yeah, you could see that even trying to realign things here, I'm probably doing more harm than good. I do want the pieces to be essentially right on top of each other where they belong, and you can see that this, it's torn in a couple places, unfortunately. And I have a little bit, I have little decal bits on my fingertips, which is not fun. So the best thing I can do here is try to get those little bits off of my fingertip as best as possible, and try to splice this back together to the way it ought to be, which, oops, as you can imagine, is not going to be terribly easy. So at some point, I'm either going to, kind of say, hey, good enough, or I'm going to need to break out tweezers, which is always an option. Or sometimes I like to use a hobby knife, the X-Acto knife blade, because that at least is very good at getting underneath things. The trade-off there, of course, is that the X-Acto knife is sharp. And since it is sharp, it has a tendency to tear the decals just as badly as anything else. All right. Well, I found most of the little pieces. My hands seem to be devoid of them now. And remember, since I've just plopped them on there, I really, really, really do not want to be messing with them when I am toweling things off here to smooth out the good part of the decal. So I need to be exceptionally careful about that part. Mostly I'm just not going to smooth out right near that, the junction point there. So that's as good as that's going to get, I'm afraid. Now, while it would be super fun to watch me apply all like 30 some decals, my water's actually gotten fairly cold as well, so that needs to be replaced. But instead of watching me fiddle around with the rest of this, there is one other fairly major undertaking to do that is not unique to this rocket, but is something that we haven't really had to do yet. And that is build a parachute. So here's the parachute. I've actually taken the time to cut it out already, but you'll notice that it is not pre-assembled, which is kind of annoying and is definitely a throwback to the way things were a long time ago. Now, in addition to the piece of plastic, there is some string, and there are these what are essentially page reinforcers. The page reinforcers go, as you can imagine, on the corners, and there are little guide boxes there for us. And I'm going to do my best to get they were white circles in the middle. I took the time to remove them. I'm going to do my best to put the page reinforcer things right on the corners where they are indicated to go. as quickly as possible because this isn't super exciting. But I do need to do them all before I finish up the parachute build. And it doesn't, as you know, it would be great if this was perfectly accurate when I'm putting them on. But if you'll notice, this one's pretty good based on how well it's centered. But most of the diagrams were not terribly accurate, which is, again, kind of irritating. Now, the instructions, which are, by the way, printed on the outside of the parachute, so here they are. I've already done this first step, cut out the parachute. I've already attached these grippers, they say. And then it says, don't touch the back side of them. Yeah, well, that makes sense. And then it says punch out the gripper with a sharp pencil. You could certainly do that. I happen to have a hole punch right here, so I think I'm going to do that instead. And that's just as simple as lining things up. I'm actually going to do it this way and punching through. Yep, good enough. I'm just going to punch out 2 of these, I think. As thrilling as it is to watch. Anyway, once the grippers are perforated properly, then we can go about using the string that they've provided us. So the string is to make the shroud lines. Now, you would, of course, need to fully punch everything out in order to do this, but we're not going to worry about that too much. So the string is separated. It's 3 strands, which is great because that's how many sets of holes we have. And all you need to do is then thread the string that they give you through the hole and then tie a knot. A nice overhand knot. I'm going to actually tighten it, and then I'm going to do another one going the other direction. And there we go. So that's all there is to tying the knots. Now, of course, it needs to have a second tie location. There's some debate about how you should line these up. The Estes chutes, by and large, have the 2 next to each other, 2 next to each other, and then one across like this. Other chutes I've seen, nylon ones in particular, always have the strands going between the 2 chutes, or the 2 attachment points that are next to each other, so they don't go completely across the canopy. Frankly, I'm not entirely sure why there's a difference. I think it's easier to manage the Estes style attachments. There we go. But it is certainly easier to build a parachute only worrying about the holes that are immediately next to each other. Regardless, the first knot that you did, pair of knots you did, they have to be next to each other, because even if I'm going to do the Estes across the middle line, 2 across from each other down here, 2 across from each other up here, or next to each other, and then 1 the whole way across, it doesn't really matter terribly much. So that's the basic construction sequence. It's not hard. It's just an extra little annoyance that you need to do if somebody hasn't built the parachute for you already. Anyway, once that's done, it would get attached inside the rocket. I obviously have a lot more decal work to do, which, that's fine. I don't really mind decal work so long as the decals come off cleanly, which may not be the case for this one. Something to look forward to. But in any event, when everything is done, then it'll get a clear coat of spray paint, and that will be the end of it. So this wraps up the first in the Quest model line that we've done. So thanks for watching, and I will see you for whatever model comes next. See you then.